after his name. Oh,
And Jane, I'm recording when it's 5 o'clock.
All right. Archer Lowry, I think that's going to be Abby. There she is. Are you Archer?
Yeah, obviously my son was the last one to use my computer for Zoom.
All right. Well, it's 5 o'clock and we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting of the Committee of the Whole together. Thank you all for coming. We have a couple of guests with us tonight, so that's good. And we will ask Lou to note roll call.
So noted.
I don't know of any announcements unless Steve or someone else does. So if not, we'll go to the minutes from the 2nd of March, 2021, and I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion, corrections, edits? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. So item 5, items for discussion. 5.1, discussion regarding Village Hall reopening and employees returning to the office. They've all been working. So, yeah.
Thanks,
Lou and I will tag team on this. So with the new orders, well, 2 weeks ago, we talked to staff to say, what do we want to do? What do we feel comfortable with? And I think our takeaway, Lou, was internal staff will likely come back the Monday after election is the plan. So keeping the strategy and people safe through the important election process. And then people can come back. Obviously, if they have concerns about risk and health and things like that, they can talk with their supervisor or me about situations like that. And we also will likely, we will have people working remotely some anyway. It's just going to be the nature of things going forward. Maybe a day a week or 2 days a week. But if they need to be on at Village Hall, they will be. And as far as openings, go ahead, Jane.
No, I was just gonna say, when you say internal staff, you mean people who work in the office as opposed to public service workers?
Yeah, well, yes, public service workers have been back. Judd has a plan for them. They are, still staying apart from each other, and we will do the same at Village Hall. We'll still wear face protection, personal protection, as long as Dane County is requiring it or makes sense to do so. And then Lou, you want to speak of Village Hall itself and opening up?
Our thought process was giving a week with all of the department heads and staff here in Village Hall, just so we can get used to that and having all of us here and how that works with keeping social distance and still being able to perform our duties and have the comforts of the job that we all enjoy having while we're at work. And if that is feeling good, then doing a soft opening to the public the following week, just to test that out and see how that's working. And then if that goes well, then do a May 1st announcement that Village Hall is open. That was what the staff talked about. That's what they felt comfortable with, but obviously the board.
Okay. Questions, comments for Lou and Steve?
Jane, I just have
Just
a couple statements. First of all, I am really glad we're having this discussion. This was a very long discussion and debate in the Senior Center, Community Center Committee meeting just this week. And so I'll report more about that later when it's time. But I think it's great that we are having this discussion and trying to move in this direction, especially since we're asking facilities to accommodate our Park and Recs programs. The biggest hiccup was, you know, are you guys open? Is your village hall open? And if not, why are you wanting to use our spaces and different things of that nature? So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. And I trust, you know, the leadership of the department heads as they move forward. And I fully support doing a soft open just to test the waters, to see how things go, to make sure people are feeling comfortable and safe. And then opening it up to the public once we have a feel for how things are going to roll out, and maintaining safety as best as we possibly can.
Thank you. Anyone else? I personally think it's a rational approach, and you know, I know that should we run into any difficulty, we know how to stop and reverse, but I think we're at a point with vaccinations and knowledge about how to be safe that we should be able to come back. So I think it's a good plan. All right. With that, if there's no other comments, we will, do we need to do anything with that in village board? Okay. All right, 5.2, discussion regarding DeForest Windsor housing supply and demand analysis from Michelle and Mark Roffers, and we will turn it over to them. This is an important study, and we wanted to have plenty of time to go through it because the results of this study, coupled with the comp plan, will ultimately impact us as we make decisions on a variety of things, from neighborhood density to types of projects that the market may be seeking and that we might approve. So I'm really glad to start having this data looked at.
Great, and I think I can go ahead and get started here. I was going to share my screen, but I realized it was sharing the wrong screen. So I'm just going to start over here, and hopefully this will work better. So you have in your packet this 55-page report, and I'm going to start with page 1. No, I'm just kidding. I am going to give you a summary of what I think are the key findings from the report. I put together a presentation, and then we can dive into whatever you want to talk about in the report if you've had a chance to read it, or if not, we can focus on, or either way, we can focus on some potential policy implications from the report. So I'm hoping now you see a PowerPoint slide that says DeForest Windsor housing supply and demand analysis summary. I see some nodding heads, that's good news. And so let me tell you a little bit about what it was. And I've spoken with a lot of you already in different forums, so I apologize if a lot of this is review, at least initially. The purpose of the study is to work with both villages to identify whether and to what extent the current and future local demand for multiple family, workforce, senior, and affordable housing exceeds the current supply. The reporting does not include any policy recommendations except for some ideas for siting and design of affordable and multiple family housing based on my experience working with the community and others. The idea is that the two villages would independently take this information to inform their plans, review of development proposals, potential investments in infrastructure and otherwise. The immediate need or interest, that, at least in my selfish little existence, is to inform the Housing and Neighborhoods chapter of the comprehensive plan. And we are working actively to create that chapter, including working with P&Z. Last month, we had a discussion on the housing and mix policy within the comprehensive plan. And upcoming, we will have another community input meeting. We had a couple in the fall, if you recall, around the comprehensive plan. We're going to have another one built around affordable housing in the middle part of April. So stay tuned on that. So back to our study here. We looked at a lot of different tools and techniques to analyze supply and demand of these different housing types you see listed here on the screen. I think we came up with a pretty good methodology. we analyzed it from a number of different angles, and these are the bare kind of highlights, I think, from all that work. First off, you hear these terms bandied about a lot, and at least for our purposes, we wanted to have a clear definition for our study as to what some of these things meant. So affordable housing, it means any housing which has a cost that requires no more than 30% of a household's income to afford. And the idea is that someone or a household is cost burdened when they have monthly housing costs that exceed that 30% level. And in particular, we're interested in sort of the intersection of affordability and low income. And low income is a condition where a household's adjusted gross income is below their jurisdiction's median household income. And that varies by household size. So a household of 2, that income level is X, and a household of 4, that income level is a little bit higher. And so we used the DeForest and the Windsor income statistics to come up with the numbers you're going to see as to where the affordable housing gap may be for low-income persons. Senior housing is another topic, maybe a little less controversial, but it's housing that's intended for persons that are 65 years of age or older. So when you hear me talk about seniors, that's the age cutoff. I recognize that a lot of housing has different age cutoffs, sometimes 62, sometimes 55, which scares the heck out of me, being a couple years away from that. And but we're using 65 for the purposes of the study. Workforce housing is another term that gets bandied about and has multiple meanings depending on who you talk to. But as the state of Wisconsin, I forget the department, has defined it, I think in a way that makes sense. It's defined as where renters' households earn about 60% of the area median family income, which for your area is about $50,000, $60,000. I forget the exact total. It's in the report. So as I mentioned, the analysis is focused on affordable housing for low-income senior households, other low-income households, and the area's workforce. We also tried to address supply and demand for market rate multiple family housing, because that's an issue, as you know, for both DeForest and Windsor have received proposals for more of that in the recent past. So this touches on our general findings. First, for people that do own homes in the area, median incomes have increased by about 30% over the last 10 years, while at the same time, median sales price of a single family home has increased by 71%. And the renter side of things, median incomes have been stagnant to, if you look at older renter households, to even declining over the past decade, while rents have gone up about 30% in DeForest. So you see there's a disconnect, 2 curves, one that's going up very quickly as far as housing costs, and one that's not going up nearly as quickly as in terms of what people are earning. And we see that, evidence, and you've seen this, is in the housing prices that you see documented, on this slide as well. So the interesting dynamic we have here is that many folks, and maybe in a different market that would be homeowners, are compelled to rent and sometimes rent indefinitely. That has interesting implications on the primary focus of our study, because it increases demand and therefore cost of rental housing in the community, which makes it less affordable to other renters, the folks that, under normal circumstances, couldn't afford a home perhaps anyway. So it's an interesting dynamic where we have the markets sort of spilling over into one another. Another general finding I'd like to highlight is that when we looked at past surveys that we've done, when we interviewed folks for this study, we found that about 3 out of every 4 households that move into new homes or move into a new apartment here in DeForest and Windsor move from somewhere outside of DeForest and Windsor altogether. So they're coming from Madison, they're coming from different parts of the country, they're driven by the jobs that we have here locally, but the jobs that we have regionally in American Center, hospitals, and other locations in the area. We have a robust job market that's bringing people to the area. And DeForest and Windsor are suburban markets that typically get growth, not just from people having babies that already live here, but from people moving here from other places. So that's a key point as we think about some of these numbers. We're expecting that to continue based on work that we've done for the school district. We're anticipating over 2,000 new households in DeForest and Windsor over the next 10 years, and nearly half of those being senior households. Some of those are going to be graduated non-senior households that will become senior households as they age, and some of those will be new folks moving to the community. We've learned that there's several factors that are suggesting that we may be short on market rate rental housing in the community. And one of those includes very low vacancy rates regionally and in DeForest and Windsor themselves. And we talked with a lot of folks that are managing apartments, building apartments, and researched some other data that suggests that that's accurate. In total, we're anticipating that DeForest and Windsor together could see about 1,000 new multifamily units by 2030, all things being equal. That equates to about 100 units per year, built per year between the two villages. That's what we view would be readily attainable and the market would absorb without too much difficulty given the statistics we're seeing. So this is these stats on this page are mainly just kind of market rate, not talking about affordable housing for low income folks. And when we turn to folks that are kind of on the lower side of the income spectrum, including the current workforce, the housing supply is in DeForest and Windsor's low. Again, who are we talking about in the workforce in DeForest and Windsor? Much of the local workforce earns between $45,000 and $55,000 per year. I know the starting teacher salary is even below $45,000 for the DeForest area school district. Protective services are in that range. Line workers, that's a very common annual salary for folks that are employed. And there's a lot of people employed in your area, particularly DeForest. The DeForest Windsor area has about 7,000 jobs. About 5,500 of those are in DeForest. But if you look at the incomes of those folks, only about 10-11% can afford to buy a home in either of the two villages, the way things stand now. And if you look at the rents for the newer projects that are being built in the Park Apartments or in Windsor Crossing, they're typically seeking, the rents are such that you have to earn between $55,000 and $75,000 to afford to spend no more than 30% of your income on a unit in those places. So that's also out of the range of most of the local workforce. And you can say, well, then perhaps the older apartments will be, work for them. Well, what we're finding is that the median gross rent of all apartments in DeForest and certainly Windsor, as we looked at the two communities together, is approaching a level that's not affordable to renting households that are making that workforce income in that $50,000 range. So, what's happening is that most of those 7,000 people that work in DeForest and Windsor, can't afford to live in DeForest or Windsor. Turning over to seniors, we also see that housing demand seems to be outstripping the supply of housing devoted to seniors. Over the past decade, the senior population grew by about 900 residents, which is a 70% increase. And over that period of time, we had very few housing that was specifically specifically devoted or are targeted to seniors. And frankly, we've seen housing that wasn't, specifically restricted to seniors, like the condominium projects in Conservancy Place, do very well accommodating a more affluent senior market. We expect that number to grow quite precipitously, especially in DeForest. Windsor's population, there's a lot of older folks that are already seniors and a lot of younger folks that are in their 20s and 30s. DeForest has a big chunk of population that are in their 40s and 50s. And we're going to see that group obviously growing older over the next 10 years. And so, we'd expect that senior market to do nothing but expand for the foreseeable future. The unfortunate news is for most of that population, that senior population in the area over the past 10 years, their incomes have been stagnant. And in fact, if you account for the lower buying power of $1, senior household income has actually gone down. And our supply of housing units that are income restricted for seniors is pretty minimal, especially in Windsor. So these are, before I move on, these are not phenomenon that are unique to DeForest and Windsor. These are issues that Sun Prairie is dealing with, that Waunakee is dealing with, that Middleton is dealing with, and just keep going down the line. So this is not a unique DeForest Windsor issue. After we did our calculations, and I have some information that I can share with you to show you how we did it, we've concluded that there is an affordable rental housing need in DeForest. We estimate that about 200 affordable rental units are needed for current residents. And that doesn't include the non-resident workforce that works in DeForest each day. Of that 200, we think that there's a rental housing need of over 60 units of additional affordable senior housing in DeForest. And as we see the community grow over the next 10 years, we'd expect that projected need to grow by about 100 units total, with about half of them being senior units as that population grows as a percentage of the total population. And then we did a lot of some what ifs because there really aren't very good models on workforce housing and the demand for workforce housing in a community. And Michelle may have more to add on this because she's talked with a lot of employers, but we just made in our study an assumption if just 5 to 10% of DeForest non-resident workforce would move to DeForest if housing units were affordably priced for them, we could easily see that rental housing need, that 206 number, double, or even come close to tripling today, growing to perhaps 400, 500 unit deficit, with that number increasing as local jobs continue to increase. And we, have seen that success with a number of new businesses and it's coming to the area. So those are the bottom line numbers I have, and I'm going to go real quickly through these tables right now, but I just wanted to let you know that I have them so I can explain a little bit about the house. This table just shows the cost appropriateness to households living in DeForest today and how we came up with the 200 gap if you add up the green numbers. And then this table, and again, I'm happy to revisit this, shows how we project that number may grow over time with growth in the community. I'll close with one slide and then come up for air and enable discussion here. So the next question is, so what? What do we do with that information? That's where you come in. What are the policy responses? How might this affect our housing policies and where we map lands for affordable housing and multiple family housing in the community? The CDA is anxious to get started on doing some redevelopment planning of key sites in the community. Affordable housing could certainly be a component of redevelopment areas and redevelopment planning. The zoning ordinance could be tweaked to promote greater affordability. Often that relates to density. And as we've seen, the multiple family proposals come forward, they're certainly pushing up against the upper ends of current regulatory density within the village. Another policy response would be to calibrate or recalibrate TID project plans to promote affordable housing that would be appropriate for some TIDs, probably not others, based on their focus and geography. State law also enables a one-year extension for TID closure dates, with the proceeds or the increment from that last year devoted to affordable housing efforts. Communities in the area like Fitchburg have executed that and raised some funds for affordable housing promotion. Partnerships always work. There's folks here in the community that have great knowledge on affordable housing and the needs of affordable housing and how to deal with and address the potential negative impacts or perceptions associated with affordable housing related to increased service demands. Grants and pursuing grants, I know CDA has already talked about that, and supporting private ventures to build affordable housing through the low-income housing tax credit program. Recruiting businesses, working with local banks who have certain lending requirements that may be supportive of affordable housing. And then just some administrative and softer things, public information and education, monitoring progress, things like that. So, obviously there's a lot of details behind these 7 or 8 bullet points, but just to kind of get your brain spinning as to what we could focus on within the comprehensive plan or otherwise working with you and the community to address the identified need in these areas. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to hit mute and let you engage in your discussion or answer questions as you see fit.
Thank you, Mark. First, do we have questions for Mark? And then I wanted to ask if Michelle had more she wanted to add. No? Any questions for Mark?
I do.
Abby?
Yeah, unless these are, unless he was going to talk some more, but I had a question about, how you were thinking about senior housing. Should housing for people with disabilities kind of follow under that same category because they might have similar, revenue, access to revenue, like with Social Security and things like that, or where do people with disabilities fall? That I should say people with disabilities that might have limited employment opportunities and might rely more on Social Security and things like that.
In our study, we didn't try to isolate or project the demand for folks with disabilities. As you have identified, there's a correlation between elderly folks and folks that have disabilities or challenges with mobility. And so there would certainly be, some crossover there. But we didn't try to isolate that subpopulation. Similarly, I think it was Windsor asked me, well, can you identify what our senior assisted demand would be versus our senior independent demand? And that's also, very challenging, and in part because someone who's senior independent this year might 2 years from now need assisted living. So it's a very fluid kind of situation. I fear I dodged your question, Abby, but I guess I could say we just didn't look at the specific needs of that population.
Well, I ask because I wonder if they should be, like, as we look to the future and planning and you know how we want to tackle the different issues, if they should be kind of put together. Because I remember from the apartments right by the community and senior center that there's certainly people with disabilities and some people with disabilities who are also seniors. So I know there's some similarity there, and I didn't want them to, I guess, slip through the cracks.
Yeah. And Abby, any new construction would be subject to full compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the units would, and the buildings would by law be accessible to all populations.
Okay. Yeah, and I was also thinking too, like, I know there's a nonprofit, I want to say out of Cottage Grove or some, I think it's called Moving Out, that specializes in developments for people with disabilities. And then my other question was, I have no idea what page it is, but I think it was more towards the end of the analysis. I think you mentioned in a sentence that multifamily developments, as long as there were certain criteria was followed, doesn't lower property taxes in the neighborhood that it's within.
Yeah, we worked with CARPC staff 6 years ago when we were doing the last update to the comprehensive plan, and we had that question now: is that does multifamily negatively affect property values of nearby single family? And we and they could find really no evidence to that effect. You know, I think incompatible uses can generate negative property values. So the key will be quality. The key is upkeep, maintenance over time, and those kind of things, regardless of use, will benefit the community. We identified 98 units of housing that is available, affordable housing in DeForest that's available for seniors, and 20 of those units are in a small project that even among staff we had to try to figure out where it was, because it blends so well into the community. So I think that's the key with any type of affordable project. Sun Prairie right now has an approved project from Habitat for Humanity. It's called the Town Crossing Development on the east side of Sun Prairie. It's a mix of housing that is going to be built that sort of the Habitat way with sweat equity built in, and market rate housing. So that's another key, is to kind of blend these things into the community rather than say that this is the spot or the corner that we're going to put housing for the workforce. So anyway, that long answer to your question, but there was really no statistical evidence that we could uncover 6 years ago that suggested that these are going to negatively affect property values nearby.
Yeah, I just asked that because when I do sometimes hear from residents that are concerned about affordable housing, or more specifically like any low-income housing that has a government subsidy attached to it, that it would affect surrounding property values for single-family homeowners. And so asking about that is, I think that's a really important point to make. And also, if we obviously we are updating our comprehensive plan, is that there's I think it's important that there's a community education component to it, that there's some misunderstanding of what these kind of developments mean, and that we're really committed to doing it the right way, and that it really shouldn't affect property values, and it should really be a wonderful part of the neighborhood. And I think that would probably be everybody's goal. So,
well,
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of connected to the overall economic development program too. I mean, we have these jobs in the community that benefit the community by increasing the tax base, which in turn provide opportunities for athletic complexes and other things within the community that everyone benefits. And to what extent does the community want to accommodate those employees to actually be able to live here, is part of the project.
Thank you. All right, Michelle, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, and I didn't want to jump in. I didn't realize that you wanted me to speak before asking board member questions, so my apologies. But if I could just add something to what Mark finished on, and my item really is about the workforce. And I just wanted to let folks know that that was a question we had, is what does the workforce, do the workers that come to DeForest, do they want to live in DeForest? Would they live here if they had options? And so one of the things that we're looking to do is really talk to employers. So we had in late February, an employer roundtable just of about 6 employers that responded to the Business Walk survey that they'd like to be involved in solutions to problems and solutions to their issues that they have in the community. And I tell you, it was much more about housing than it was economic development. They were very interested in what we were doing to bring diverse types of housing to the community, and have heard from their employers that they do want to live here. So what we want to do with that and get that, we have that anecdotal information, which we expected that, but then is they're going to allow us to kind of survey their employees and to get some specific information so that we can have that. But it was enough to that the whole conversation steered toward housing and availability of housing. So that was about an hour of the discussion. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that in, that we do have speaking points from those employers that would love to appear or talk to folks. And so moving forward on that is really getting that information, connecting with them. But I just wanted to let folks know that.
Thank you, Michelle. And Bill, you had your hand up before, and I didn't mean to pass by you.
Oh, no, I was waiting for Michelle. Couple comments, just observations, and maybe, either Michelle or Mark can address it at the end. There's no need to jump in, but I'll just be in general. The study kind of mirrors what Waunakee had done about 2 years ago. The numbers are really similar. Of course, Dane County median, this and that, they went a lot by. They had quite a, in their survey, they had quite a bit of community participation. I think there's 12 diverse members on their committee that presented it. I guess we got a couple, but I don't know if that's enough. Wages, we, as DeForest, we specialize in warehouse type of jobs. We're not like Verona, where it's, of course, what do they call that place? Epic, those type of wages. There's a ton of warehouse jobs. A lot of them don't pay much. Not to pick on Bell, but I'm looking at their website, and a packer, forklift type of person, entry level, it's $13 an hour. It kind of goes with what Michelle was saying. You can talk to these employers, but of course the employers want to pay as little as possible. And Michelle, have these employers express any interest in subsidizing their employees that want to live in DeForest? It's kind of a slippery slope. It's like they want to pay as little as possible, which I understand.
Well, Bill, let me just interject there, if I might. Without my experience with these employers and sitting in on meetings with them, is they're actually paying fairly competitively in order to get workers into their businesses. And So I don't think they're undercutting the wages of their employees. They pull workforce from lots of different directions. And they talked about strategies that might be useful in terms of looking at financing, looking at transportation, looking at housing development, working in partnership with the village and developers in order to make it work. So I want us to be really careful when we have employers that are being open, realistic, and supportive of all these concepts. So, unlike some of the past times when we had people just, what's the lowest wage we can pay? That's not what I see happening. Maybe it is at McDonald's, but it certainly isn't at Orbis and Clack and, Demco and Evco and those places. I think people are paying very competitive wages. So I want to make sure we're clear about that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's just that wages haven't kept up in 20 years. It's been really, any wage really hasn't kept up in the past 20 years with the price of a house. And that's a clash. And 20 years ago, a house was $110,000. Now say it's $250,000. The employees' wages haven't kept up with that. And if you look at, I don't want to get off too much of a tangent. Look at the price of a sheet of half-inch CDX. A year ago was $13. Now it's $52. So, how do we build a $250,000 house in this community when the lot is $80,000? Maybe that's where we need to go with the housing study. How do we do we finance this? Does the village subsidize it? Who's going to subsidize the lower prices on this? I'm a firm believer in the apartment owner getting whatever they can get. We just last week, we took a tour of Cottage Grove, and the 2-bedroom there, it was $1,900 for an apartment, an amount I find obscene, but that's what it is. That's what the market, and they are 100% occupied, as they said. It's not like they're not finding people to shell out $1,900. But I fully agree on not getting into too much detail with employers. I appreciate them coming forward and talking about it. It is kind of a problem when we have warehouse type jobs. We don't have the professional, scientific, higher paying jobs, but it is what it is.
Well, let's also though, and I don't mean to answer for Mark and Michelle, but this is something I've been thinking about a lot and reading and hearing from Mark and Michelle. I think it's important that we not dwell on the negatives of the past, but we start looking forward for solutions and opportunity, and look at, where's their dollars available to support financing of a house for someone at a teacher's salary, or at the $55,000 to $75,000 range, or even, maybe there's 2 salaries in a family. There's USDA money, there's money that some foundations are coming forward with to do financing. There's some special programming for banks to use. I think we just need to work with our employers and figure out how we can put some money on the table, and also find creative ways to finance homes. And there are ways to do that. We just need to work real hard to find some of those ways.
Yeah, and that's
I'm sorry, Mark and Michelle, Bill and I got into it, but we open it up back to you guys.
Can I add to that? And maybe they'll come in. I just lost my train of thought. Where's that money going to come from?
Bill, let's let Mark answer.
Okay.
Well, specific to that, Bill, I know Michelle and CDA are already looking at some grant dollars from the state to bring to the community, and she could speak more intelligently on that than I can. We can utilize, perhaps with adjustments in thinking, tax incremental financing to help support affordable housing or close gaps and deal with, those rising material costs that you alluded to. And then but the thing I wanted to comment on the most is, you mentioned the Wanakee study, and I want to reemphasize that our job wasn't to come up with a strategy in this study. It was to kind of analyze the numbers. But we are at the same time working with you guys and DeForest on community outreach around housing and neighborhoods. We had a survey back in the fall where we asked people some questions about affordable housing, and we'll certainly revisit those soon. We, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're going to have another community meeting, a Zoom type community meeting in April to get more community feedback and direction. And CDA and P&Z are already in public forums talking about the approach and how we may rewrite the housing and neighborhoods chapter in the comprehensive plan, which is a public process to deal with the strategy. So yeah, and there may be a need for an ongoing group to continue to carry the torch and some of these ideas forward. Just because we put something in the comprehensive plan doesn't make it so. It just suggests that it's policy or direction of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Michelle?
Yeah, I would just add that I think I'm going to be talking about some of these opportunities later in the meeting. And we have talked about them at the CDA, but there's also opportunities for the village. And I think really the study, as Mark said, really was to identify the demand. And so, we've identified the demand. There's some more specific cases to be made with employers that we can drill down to those. But I think really the summary of it was that we do know there's a demand, and there are gaps in our housing. So I think the information that Mark created kind of geared toward you as policymakers to say, okay, there's this gap, here's the information, what do we want to do about it going forward? How do we want to address it? Where could it be? How do we, the whole strategy is really, how you want to address it, but this is really the information to kind of feed that discussion.
Thank you. And I would just add, I think that this is an exciting opportunity for us to partner with our employers and to partner with folks around the community to think through strategies that might be useful for both affordable and some low income and senior housing. The other side of the coin is looking at what does this mean for our neighborhoods and our density and our planning. So this is good data for us to have. Other comments, questions? Jason?
Yes, thank you. We did a good job. Thanks, Mark, again for the presentation and kind of abbreviating a lot of it. It was good. I know you looked when we talked before. We segmented 65 and older. Have we had any success looking at the demographic and the need at age 26 or 27, 28 and younger? Because that is kind of just a first starter. And if 80% of our affordable housing need is at age 27 below, these are transitional folks that haven't quite started building families yet, and the need may not be as significant as shown on that. And then secondly, I'm thrilled that we're kind of taking this step and we're working in hand with the different employers. But I also want to warn us to be very careful. I don't know that there's a community on earth that has socially engineered its way into prosperity. So the market is definitely going to drive a lot of what's going on here, and we have to be mindful of that. A sheet of plywood now versus, and Bill, you had a good point. Building materials are just out of whack right now, and it's not going to help anybody with the cost of new building, new construction. So it's a difficult road to haul, because I don't think there's a lot of support out there for a ton of subsidized housing. I know that, Michelle, I think you've been looking at some other HUD programs that might help benefit us down the road. But just, before we jump in with both feet, I want to make sure everybody's fully aware of kind of the direction we're heading. And it all gets back to this housing mix and what do we want the village to look like? And again, I'll just emphasize that, despite what the study says, most of the folks that are coming here for that single family suburban sprawl. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's what makes us special and unique. So I definitely don't want to, kick that to the curb. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. The one other thing, when Michelle was talking to employers and when I was able to sit in on that meeting, and I thank you for that opportunity, that folks were talking about is transportation. And while that's not the purpose of this study, it points out that it's a multifaceted problem. It's not just the lack of housing. It's not just the lack of transportation. There are many things for us to look at. Anything else you want to add, Mark? Not Bill, was your hand up?
Yeah, just one comment if Mark doesn't have anything.
I don't. Go ahead.
Almost over 33 years ago, when I came to DeForest, got a WIDA loan, 8.9%, 10% down. I had one 1-year-old and one in the oven. I was not a rich man. I seem to have done it. I don't know how, looking back. I just have a new neighbor across the street. Guy's 26 years old, single. He's got a 3-bedroom house, young kid. I don't know what he does. I haven't found out yet. I'm sure he's not a rocket scientist, but he looks like a good kid. But he's able to afford a $205,000 house. I realize there's a limited market for available houses like that. I don't know why the person that he bought his house from even got a real estate agent. I mean, could have put an ad on Craigslist and it would got snapped up, within a week. But he seems to do it, and I don't know. But I just wanted to interact that I think some other trustees have said when they started out in DeForest, they did have some type of government program, and I just wanted to add that yes, I did too, and it was very helpful. But I still had to come up with 10%, which a lot. That's probably the worst thing to keep somebody from buying a house today, is coming up with 10% of, say, 250,000 or 20%. That's a chunk of money. And if people are living paycheck to paycheck, they aren't even going to be able to afford the 250,000, much less the $375,000 house. Okay.
Those are great points, Bill, and points that we need to put into the mix as we're strategizing and looking forward. I emphasize our role is not to solve everyone's housing problem, but to make available opportunities and work with making sure we have a diversified availability of housing stock. So keep track of your points, write them down and share them with Michelle and Mark so that we have a record of that stuff. And Abby's points too. They're not to be ignored. They're to be looked at in a forward looking fashion. So thank you. All right. If we thank you for going through that, Mark and Michelle. We'll move on to 5.3, discussion regarding community development block grant and other opportunities through the state of Wisconsin Department of Administration.
Thanks. It might take me a little longer than 5 minutes. I promise it won't take me longer than 10 or 12, but I don't know if I want to, if there's anything else that's on the agenda that they might want to go first. I'm on the board as well.
Well, that's true. It's 5:54. We could do yours at the village board and
that works.
And then you'll have more time. So everybody good with that? Okay, then I would ask Steve, if you have anything in addition?
Being audited this week. It's going fine as usual, so no worries.
It's getting him up early, though. All right. Police Department update. Chief, do you have anything? I know
No,
you have. some-
nothing right now, thanks.
All right, Public Services, Judd?
Yep, I got 3 things real quick. One, as you can see on my screen, proof of life, if it's been here. It's a pretty sweet truck. If you may recall that the leaf vac portion dumps off of the truck. So the truck was sent back with the dump box on it and needed some air release valves for the dump box itself. So we should hopefully be getting the truck back and all in working order here in the next week and a half or so. But it's here. It's got some good suction. That hose will suck up a brick. So we got some public education to do for folks, but we're excited to have that here. We're back. The guys are all back getting caught up on projects. They're working feverishly, tree trimming and other things around the community, getting equipment up to snuff and ready to roll for the spring project. And then we are working on, Greg had a great idea for a volunteer dog park cleanup event. That's going to be April 10th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, like from 9 to 11. So we'll have some shovels and other things out at the dog park and encourage people to help scoop some stuff. And we may even have a local business that's willing to provide a scoop for a scoop. So more to come on.
Okay, anything else, Judd?
Nope.
All right. Michelle's going to join us in the board meeting. Corey, do you have anything? Nope. Reese?
Yeah, I just wanted to share quick, and it sounds like Tasidra has some more information, but the Community and Senior Center did reach out saying that we are going to start being able to have space available to us in April. So thank you for everything that you guys have done, and we're excited to keep moving forward.
Great, that's wonderful. All right, well, it's 5:56. Reese, did you have anything on pool?
Nothing, no.
Okay, then what I would suggest, if folks are okay with it, we don't have a closed session, that we take a 4-minute break and then reconvene into the village board meeting. So I would ask.
Adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll see you.
Jane, when it's 6 o'clock, I am ready for you.
Okay. Did you guys see the article this morning about the City Council of Madison trying to shorten their meetings? And they've been known to go till frequently to 2, 3 in the morning, and a couple of meetings till 6 a.m. in the morning.
Can't imagine.
Can't either. All right, it's 6 o'clock. Is everyone back? We have a quorum. All right. Abby, Greg, Tashidra. All right, Jason, would you lead us in the pledge tonight?
Did you call it to order?
No, not yet. I'm about to do it, but I wanted to make sure that you were going to be willing.
I would be happy to, yes.
All right. All right. Well, with that, we will call the village board meeting to order. We'll ask Lou to note roll call, and we'll ask Jason to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You were too fast, Jason. Sorry about that, folks. No flag.
My neighbor has one, so I was able to look out the window. All right. Announcements. The village board will convene into closed session pursuant to section 19.851E of the Wisconsin statutes for purposes of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public lands, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, purchase of an easement for the North Street reconstruction project, negotiation of lease with Verizon, and section 9.851G of the Wisconsin statutes for purposes of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, tax assessment litigation, Walgreens. All right. With that, we will move to the consent agenda. And I would look for a motion to approve the minutes of March 2nd.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second? And we have a second. Thank you. Any discussion, corrections, or edits? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, appearances before the board. I know of one appearance, Justin. And I don't want to kill your last name. Mimone?
Mitmoen.
Okay, I'm sorry, it
okay.
didn't come through real clear. So would you like to speak now for a few minutes?
Sure. So good evening. I would come to you this evening to discuss what I see as a problem that exists on South Street. I've lived on the street for the past 7 years. During that time, I've noticed an increase in the amount of traffic and of more concern, the speed of the traffic on that street. Granted, I know this is me arbitrarily saying that cars are speeding, but I've also seen indications that people are in fact doing so. On several occasions, I've driven down our road and have had other cars pass me when we are obeying the speed limit. My children have also been playing in our driveway and have had an instance where they had a ball roll into the road and had a car that was unable to stop due to their speed. I fear that this would be my children at some point. From my perspective, the speed of cars is of great concern. With the increased vehicle traffic, there's also been an increase pedestrian traffic on the road. This is especially the case crossing the road where the Upper Yahar River Trail intersects the road. I fear not only for the safety of my children playing near the road, but also for all of the pedestrians and bicycles on the road and crossing the road. I know that in the past, enforcement of the speed limit has been increased by the police department. While I greatly appreciate their time and effort in this matter, I believe this only to be a stopgap measure. I know that it is not possible to have an officer sit on the street 24/7. I believe the solution to this is to add permanent changes to the road to decrease the speed of vehicles. While I'm no expert in this area, I know that items such as speed bumps, narrowing of the road, or traffic circles have been effectively employed in other areas. These are things that I would believe to be the best solutions to the problem on South Street. I know that enforcement has already been increased since I've talked to President Cahill Wolfgram, and a speed study has also been started. I look forward to these results. But I hope that you take your time and listen to what I have to say, and appreciate your time and attention in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And after you and I spoke, I did talk with Chief Olson, and they did start a speed study. And they've been looking at the situation. One of the things that we hear often is, let's put in speed bumps. Unfortunately, the fire department, fire trucks suffer greatly from speed bumps. So we need to probably look at some other solutions or suggestions. So Chief, do you want to, oh, Jason, do you have a question?
Yeah,
Anybody?
a question for Justin, if he's
Okay.
on, if I may. I just would like to ask you, if we installed, I don't know, you see them in other communities, a permanent speed board, would that be a step in the right direction? I don't know that, and I know I live literally right around the corner from where you're talking about. I I drive the speed limit. A lot of cars that I see do, but yes, there are definitely some that are a little heavy on the gas. But just something that flashes to remind them how fast they're going would probably be a pretty good mental check to slow down. And then, yes, when I do see traffic enforcement, I know South Street is a very common hangout because it's probably one of the areas with the biggest problems. So would that help?
I mean, I'm sure it would, whether it's a permanent solution or would just help for a while. I'm not sure. Maybe that's something the speed study would be able to ascertain, doing something beforehand, and then after that would go in.
Okay, other questions for Justin? Bill?
Yeah, speed perception's a big thing. We kind of ran into that when the Innovation Drive bridge opened up, and Chief Olson did do a traffic study and found out the majority of people, were within the speed parameters. There's always going to be somebody ripping up and down the street. I had that problem years ago. Almost half the time that I do go out on South Street, there's either an officer coming at me traveling, or this was last fall. I saw a lot of officers sitting there. I didn't know if they were doing speed enhancement or enforcement, but I did see a presence there. This is a major thoroughfare. It's only going to get worse with more traffic connecting to River Road. If River Road developments come into play, of course. And I hate to say it, but I think 25 miles an hour is kind of slow. A lot of cities that road would be 30, but I'm not going to vote to raise it. But it is a major thoroughfare, and I don't know what to say. I would like to see Chief study, because this isn't a street that I imagine gets a lot of complaints, but I'd like to see the data. But I feel sorry for anybody that lives on a street where you get passed, and that's unacceptable. But what can you do about it? Maybe that guy gets caught the next time. I don't know, but I'd like to see what the chief comes up with on a study to answer these questions. But thanks for appearing.
Thank you, Justin. We do appreciate it. Thanks, Bill. Anybody else have questions for Justin? Yes.
Hi, my name is Laurel. I don't have a question for Justin, but I live on South Street. And I guess my thought and kind of feedback on this is that there's a fair portion of that road where there's no sidewalk. And I think that's kind of been addressed and people know that. But besides the speed issue and the volume of cars, you're walking directly on that road. So when you're trying to pass cars on a bike, or with not so much a bike, but with strollers or walking, you definitely are in cars pathway directly, especially now with winter, and you don't have even that width of that shoulder as well. So I think that is definitely something that needs to be considered in these discussions.
All right, Laurel, can you give us your full name and address for the record?
Yeah, I'm actually Justin's wife. He's at work and I'm at home with the kids right now. So it's Laurel Mitmon, 912 South Street.
Okay.
Jane,
Judd.
So Public Services Department's been looking at this street and some things we can do. We are talking about a lighted sign at the crossing there for the Upper Yahara River Trail over to Western Green Trail, Mayapple Court there. And then looking at some alternative ways to mark a walking path on South Street and delineate it and give it some separation from traffic, but it'll be temporary. Way to do it, we have to be able to also move it in winter time when we want to do snow removal. So there are some options that we're looking at to try to assist with that there.
Thank you. Chief, do you want to add anything to this discussion?
Yeah, we're well aware of the South Street speeding. Obviously, it's been an ongoing thing, and maybe it's part of the road design. Maybe it's it was the main thoroughfare east side to west side of Village for the longest time. Now with Innovation Drive opening up, obviously it's another avenue. I can't speak to car count or anything like that. We did put our radar unit out there for about 10 days. We found the 85th percentile is 33 miles an hour for people traveling on South Street. But again, that's a very long stretch of road. So it depends on where you place the radar unit and get your analysis point from. In that particular point, we put it in the 600 block of South Street, close to the Mayapple Trail and Sunnybrook. As Judd was just talking about the walking lane, he and I had discussions from feedback from other residents about that particular stretch. So I wanted to capture the speed data from there. And the data that we captured was actually pre-snow. So it was in that really nice stretch of weather we had there. We're well aware of, like I said, of the South Street, and we're cognizant of it. We pay attention to it. As now the weather gets even hopefully a little bit better, it's supposed to be 50, 60 over the weekend. We'll be able to deploy some of our other resources like signboards to, to hopefully help remind motorists of their speed and kind of indicate for them to slow down. But until the snow gets back away from the curb and we don't have salt and as much sand, it kind of deteriorates the board, and it also deteriorates some of the solar panels that don't allow it to charge properly. So we just keep that stuff inside. But we'll continue to monitor it. Our traffic response team that we kind of had Sergeant Payne put together, and he's doing a great job with that, is looking at all of our speed complaints, and he's making sure we get out for some high visibility enforcement, especially as the weather turns nicer and kids get out on their bikes and their skateboards and all of those fun devices.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Justin, for bringing it forward, and Laurel, and we will continue to try and work on this. All right, moving along. Are there any other appearances before the board? Okay, if not, we will move. There is no old business. We'll move to new business. Do we have an additional discussion about the DeForest Windsor housing supply demand analysis? Otherwise,
No.
I think we can keep moving.
Yes.
Abby's raising her hand.
Oh.
Jason's raising his hand. So, Abby?
If Michelle wants to go first, that's fine.
Oh, no, I thought we were asking if their staff had anything else to present, and I was saying no, so sorry.
Okay, that's great. I don't really have any more questions. I just wanted to thank Mark and Michelle for this study and I know there was other participants that shared information that was part of it. I just thought it was a really good comprehensive document that kind of answered a lot of the questions that I've been having over the last few years, and was also like I was already pretty aware of housing affordability issues and shortages in DeForest and Dane County in general, but I guess in a lot of ways it was even worse than I thought with, now that we have exact numbers. And I appreciate how there was a focus on affordability, both in terms of, does our current supply meet the demand of current residents and also maybe possible future residents, and then also cost burden, because even though people might be able to pay their rent every month, like how much money is left over for all the other necessities in life, like food, clothing. If they have kids, there's a lot of expenses related to kids. And I remember when I talked to different representatives from the DeForest Area Community Senior Center, maybe it was like 2 years ago now, it really stuck out to me that they said that they kind of felt that with all the services that they provide and food donations and things like that, they really provide a service where they're almost like a stopgap themselves with how expensive, some of our seniors in the community are so cost burned that I think I remember them saying that some of our seniors in some of the apartments, like all their income, whether it's Social Security or whatever money they have saved up, like all of their monthly income is going to paying that rent. And then they're relying so much on the center and the food pantry and things like that to pay for food and using their credit cards to also fill in the gap too. And I'm sure that's happening with families with children too, which has got to be hard for them. So I really appreciate that consideration in the study. And then also another big thing that stood out was compared to Windsor, we're probably meet the needs of seniors with housing currently pretty well, but considering, I think Jason brought this up too, that we have so many 40 to 50-year-olds in the village that that demand is very likely to go up. And I remember seeing in the report that Mark mentioned that it's important that if we do have, certain units that are created, whether it's homes that people can buy or rentals, that there's ability for conversion, because the future generations might not have quite so many seniors, so that there can be some adaptability where maybe a unit was previously used for a senior, but maybe it can easily be converted to someone who's younger or has different needs. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then I'll just finish up saying that that's just the big number that sticks out in my mind is that there's 200 households currently in DeForest paying more than they can afford. So I think that number will stick out with me quite a bit as we go forward with our plans. And I also appreciate the Community Development Authority that they're in existence and seeing what ideas they have. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Abby. And remember, this is information we got related to market. We don't know exactly what we're going to do with this data yet. Jason?
Just a question. I know you had invited all of the prospective candidates to attend. Were they there for the committee of the whole? Or are they new to this meeting and they haven't seen the summary that we got in COW?
They were invited to the committee of the whole, and I know I saw some of them. I know that Kelsey was here. I think Rebecca was.
Okay, great. I expanded my screen. I didn't see everybody without their video. I just wanted to make sure that they did see. So thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Moving on then. 8.2, discussion and potential action regarding community development block grant and other grant opportunities through the state of Wisconsin Department of Administration. Michelle.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen here. And let's see. Let me stop that for a minute. Wrong thing. Sorry about that. Can you see my PowerPoint?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you for that. Let me get back. Okay, here we go. All right, how about now?
Yes.
Yep.
And is it clear to everyone? Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So if you recall, back in the spring and summer of 2020, the village board discussed joining the Dane County Urban County Consortium to enable applications for HUD grants related to CDBG and home, and which stands for Community Development Block Grant, as well as home programs. So the decision in July was made to explore the other partnership available for applications toward the programs, which is the Department of Administration in the state of Wisconsin. So basically, just as a reminder, you either join as the Village of DeForest, either join the Dane County Consortium or go through the state, and I'll go into some partnerships that we might have to join there for certain grants. It was also mentioned back then that the CDA would be in a position to apply for grants with the state partnership, and I do have an update there as well. So village staff has been working with the HUD Milwaukee field office and the state's Department of Administration to ensure the Village of DeForest eligibility for the program. So I wanted to come back to you, provide an update on what I've learned, some of the information on the different grants. I'm going to go into, and I'm gonna. Is that okay size there?
Yep.
I'm going to go into
Yes.
7. Thank you. I'm going to go into 7 programs that are 4 are ones that the village would apply for, and then 3 would be ones that the CDA would apply for. And I'm going to go into these just briefly and show you what information I have and then move forward. So starting with these, and I see I might have them a little bit out of order. Let's go ahead and start with the village with the public facilities. So public facilities, this is grant funds that help support infrastructure and facility projects for communities. So examples of eligible projects include improvements, repairs, or expansions of streets, drainage systems, water and sewer systems, sidewalks, and community centers. This must show a low to moderate income benefit not met for community-wide projects. So the applications are accepted each year. Deadline for this specific grant is May 13th. So might be a little late in this game, but can certainly look at next year or otherwise if the board should direct. One of the things that they mentioned when I was on the phone, and Dave Polish, I want to say that the State Department of Administration staff has been extremely helpful in understanding these programs and being available every time I call, which is a lot. And every time I Zoom with them to get more information, but they had interesting feedback. And Dave Polish, who is the director of the department, has a lot of experience with DeForest. And so he actually said for this public facilities grant, one of the potentials for DeForest would be, it's more like a neighborhood project. So maybe the community center for the whole village would not apply. But if you did something, he said, for example, with the Holem Center, if you did something with that land or that building, that could be something that could apply. So he had all kinds of ideas and is really looking forward to helping us do this. So public facilities grant is important, definitely competitive grant. This is probably one of their most competitive. So wanted to explain that a little bit. The public facilities economic development. These are awarded to local governments for public infrastructure projects that support business expansion or retention. So it's things that would apply are new and improved water and sewer system and streets that result in business expansion and job opportunities for low and moderate income individuals. So that's how all of the kind of LMI aspects go into all of these programs, and that would be how it would do here. There was an example, and again, Dave Polish, the director, said he believes that we did get a grant in DeForest for this particular grant, and that it could be used to write down cost of infrastructure at TID. So, for example, he said that he believed there might have been one around the Firestone building, and that predates me, but I'm looking into information on that to find out that information. But something that we likely have applied for or used, I think, in the early 2000s. So the planning grant, this will sound familiar to you. The grant funds support community efforts to address involving community opportunities and vitality. Example of eligible projects include the development of comprehensive plans, community development plans, and small and area neighborhood plans. It must show a low to moderate income benefit. So you have to show that in the application, how it does apply. Funds are available on a continuous basis for planning. There's no deadline for applications at this time. One of the potential projects that could be for DeForest is when we go toward doing a redevelopment project plan that our CDA is looking forward. So this has to be a unit of local government. I'm learning all of these acronyms, and they call it a ULG, which is you, the board of the Village of DeForest, must be the applicant for this. The CDA cannot be the applicant for this. So there might be some partnership there, but that's something that we could potentially look at. Housing, this one is probably the most comprehensive and requires some things on our part to apply. Those other programs that I just talked about do not. We can apply through the state funds as the Village of DeForest, but the housing, just like we had to be a part of the Dane County Urban County Consortium to go through Dane County, we have to go through another consortium to be eligible for these funds for HUD. So let me just describe a little bit about what the funding will enable us to do, and then what we need to do to qualify. So grants are for housing programs with principally benefit low to moderate income households. So exactly what we were talking about a little earlier tonight. They're primarily used for rehabilitation of housing units, home buyer assistance, and small neighborhood public facility projects. So they can be used not only to address those LMI needs, but also to leverage other programs or serve as a local match. They can also be an incentive to involve the private sector in the community developments to respond to area needs. So that's a potential there too. The eligible activities include, and this is a long list, but just to give you an idea, is rehabilitation of dwelling units. They say removal of architectural barriers, home ownership opportunities for renters, payment of relocation costs and benefits, all kinds of things, acquisition of real property for the construction of LMI housing, site improvements for the construction of LMI housing for other sources of funds. So this is exactly the kind of grant that we were talking about earlier that would help some of those things should the board decide to create a plan around affordable housing or available housing. So as we discussed at our July meeting, there is a partnership that we do have to join, and we have been invited to join the Southern Housing Region, and that is a partnership of those counties that's listed there: Columbia, Dodge, Jefferson, Kenosha, Ozaukee, Racine, Rock, Sauk, Walworth, and Washington County. And Columbia is the lead county of that, and so that means that they would be the applicant, just as Dane County would in the other instance. That Columbia is the lead county, and that's helpful to us because they manage the funding. They also manage a lot of the reporting requirements and things like that. So we're lucky to be a recipient of that funding, but they are the lead county in that. So it gets dispersed that way. So there are 3 policies, not only a resolution that we need to join the Southern Housing Region. That is going to be a simple resolution, and Al and I are kind of working on that to draft that for your next meeting, if that should be something you decide to do. But there are 3 policies that, if Al can kind of help me out here, these are policies that are pretty in line with state law, but that we have to do anyway, and I'm going to ask Al to kind of talk about that. But the one is a fair housing ordinance, 2 is a nonviolent civil rights demonstration policy, and then the 3rd one is a residential anti-displacement plan, which basically says if you displace folks, you need to have a plan to make sure they have other alternative areas to be. So I don't know, Al, if you want to just kind of give a little brief on those. We're gonna have those for your approval on April 7th. But they're fairly standard, and they are required to benefit from this housing part of this program. So I don't know if you had more to add, Al, but.
No, just to expound a little bit, the anti-discrimination and housing policy effectively reflects what state law already provides. So it would basically be the village adopting the policies that are currently in state law. There are 2 policies that are required by the federal act that funded that funds the CDBG program. One of them is a policy against using excessive force against peaceful demonstrators. Of course, the village has a policy of not using excessive force against anybody, so peaceful demonstrators would be some of anybody. So I don't think that's really anything new. The relocation provisions basically mean that you have to follow federal relocation benefits laws when you're using federal money for federal programs or for programs. It's basically that if you force somebody to move out of their house because you're doing a project that requires them to move, whether you're going to demolish the house or whether you're going to rehab low-income units, you have to find them a place to live and basically cover the additional living costs that moving into the new place causes them on a temporary or permanent basis. The permanent basis would be a cap of 5 years worth of increased expenses, but there's a whole program for relocation that you have to go through when you're using federal funds. You have to do it under state law anytime you do a project as well, but federal law adds some additional requirements like some of those living expense enhancers.
Thank you, Al. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that at this just brief time, but then we're going to have them on for discussion and possible action next time. So if anyone has any questions about that, if they don't, then I'll continue. These are 3 programs that the CDA has ability as a local community development authority to apply for on its own. And if you'll recall, the village board had said, well, maybe the CDA can apply for some of these things, and then, you know, we might not have to go through Dane County. So let's see how this is set up. So one of these is home buyer and rehabilitation, or HHR, and it is to provide essential home purchase assistance, home rehabilitation, and other vital improvements for dwelling units that are occupied by low and moderate income households. So the eligible activities include home buyer assistance, which is another thing we talked about earlier this evening. So it could be direct assistance to eligible home buyers, acquisition, rehabilitation, new construction. They can do, you know, sell their house. Let's see, they can construct housing for sale to low and moderate income home buyers of that 80% county median income. And then also for owner occupied rehabilitation, you'll recall that we had some residents that spoke to the village board last summer about wanting to participate in the Dane County Home project. And so these are things that are going to enable rehabilitation of owner occupied homes. So these applications for a 2-year period were due March 15th, 2021. The CDA did apply this year, made it just under the deadline there to understand the program, get it going. So we did apply. It was just Monday, so I have no news on that information, but we're very hopeful. Had lots of help from the HHR folks, and so just wanted to again say how just praise them. So that is one program, the CDA. This should be able to address what the residents came to us for in the summer. So if we do get this funding. And so the difference here with the Dane County and with the state is that the CDA will actually do all of the administrative work as well as the inspection work, you know, dealing with contractors, which we're well situated to do now with 2 great guys who work for the CDA, Ron Galdes and Zach Golke. And so we're well positioned to do it, and it's something that should be exciting should we get the funding. The Housing Cost Reduction Initiative is established to provide housing assistance to low and moderate income households seeking safe, decent, affordable housing. It can do either acquisition or foreclosure prevention. So another program that can help that way. It is not used for development costs, improvements to dwelling units, or payments on a construction and rehabilitation loan. Again, just like the HHR was due on March 15th, 2021, did not feel that we had the adequate information and information to get back to them by that date. So we did not apply this year. The CDA did not apply for Hickory. It's called Hickory. So again, the acronyms. And then the final one is the Housing Cost Reduction Initiative. And I should say, when I say the final one, I should say that there are other ones that are disaster relief and some of those other things. I focused on these because these were the general programs. There were some also revolving loan funds that I didn't bring to your attention at this time, but we can certainly talk about them in the future. So this assists housing organizations like the CDA with funds to develop affordable rental housing. So we can partner with groups, or we can apply directly for funds for-profits can as well. So the funds must serve households at or below 60% of the county median income. And there's rent limitations for a specified period of time. Funds may be used for acquisition, rehabilitation, new construction activities. Now there's 2 submission dates. This is a little nuanced here. Application dates are June 1st and October 15th, but there's also, which we apply for a rural location if we were to do 20 or fewer housing units that we could do any time of the year. So that is something that we could do anytime. So we've got those 2 dates, and then also any time of the year. So next steps. The housing resolution will be again put in front of you for discussion and possible action on April 7th, as well as the policies that I'll describe. And then I will do my best to continue to learn more about the programs and potential projects for applications. So just wanted to provide you the information that we had stuck to what we were discussing, that we had listened to the residents and pursued opportunities for programs under the board's direction of looking toward the state. So that is it. I hope I didn't go over my 12 minutes. Someone will have to tell me, but thank you so much. And I'd love to answer any questions.
Questions? We have Bill and then Abby.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Great research. I still remember that meeting, and the woman that came forward with her leaking roof or whatever, and I have a lot of sympathy. At that time, we were talking that we were going to have the CDA forming shortly after. Do you think that we need to run this by the CDA before the village board has final authority? I fully support the efforts, but a lot of these things will be the CDA directives. Are we going to run it by them first?
Yeah, let me share my screen again to show you and I might have glossed over this too quickly, but there are some that are village. These are all completely village programs, the planning, public facilities, the economic development, and the housing that I talked about. And then the 3 below are ones the CDA can do on its own.
Oh,
so
okay.
So these 3 the CDA can do on its own, and the CDA did vote at its March 9th meeting to apply for that. So apply for the HHR. So absolutely I run these application processes by them, and then of course these by you.
Oh, okay, thanks. You just had a lot of information and it kind of all blended together.
Thank you.
I kind of didn't get I got the sidewalks and that, but it all blended together when you.
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of acronyms and.
Thank you, Bill. Abby, you had a question?
Yeah, Michelle, I was wondering, with the CDA recently voting to apply for the home grant money, did you hear from the department administration, like the likelihood of being awarded that grant? Or if you have any sense of like how competitive it is or anything?
Sure. They certainly couldn't tell me that we would certainly get the grant, but they said the home or the HHR funds are not as competitive as the Hickory. So they said that there's no guarantee, and there's also no guarantee of the amount you'll get. You could apply for a certain amount and they give you a lower amount or a different amount. But they helped me along the way with the application, and I didn't actually send it to them and have them review it and send it back, but they've helped me put the pieces together. So I feel confident about it. I think we are a first-time grant requester on this, So I wouldn't be, I'm not 100% comfortable, but I think they do want to help us. And so we'll certainly try. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you.
And then, sorry, just a follow-up question. If it happens to not work out in our favor, are we able to decide to join the Dane County Consortium to allow our residents to access the home grant money?
I think what would happen if we didn't get the funding and that was something that the board decided to do was to kind of jump over into the Dane County program. I think it would take, because that is the time frame was that July time frame. So I think that we'd have to wait a year for that to be able to be applicable to us. Now I can find out if that we could do that July. But I know they really discourage you kind of program hopping. So I know that there was a thought that let's try this and then see what happens.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Michelle? That was a lot of information. Are your slides available?
I can certainly send, I think I did send them to Luann and she hasn't, that we can post them. Yeah, thank you. And thanks. I know there's so many words, but I just wanted to get you kind of the flavor. There's a lot of programs, a lot of them are similar, but we have a lot of opportunities.
Thank you. All right, that's good information. We'll move on then to 9.1 ordinance 2021-004, an ordinance directing the placement of an official stop sign on Peterson Crossing Boulevard at Bear Tree Parkway. Chief.
Yep, good evening. This came up in conversation with Greg Hall when the road goes through in the Hooper development. There's a little bit of a blind spot at that intersection now. So just to increase public safety, traffic safety, we're asking to put a four-way stop sign at that intersection. There is some berming on the northwest corner that does obstruct the view slightly. We just fear with through traffic, it'll become worse. I did run this through public safety and they believe unanimously passed or recommended that to occur.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Chief? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve placement of an official stop sign.
I make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second by Tashidra. Any further comments or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Presentation of resolutions, 10.1, resolution 2021-002, a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Services to submit a 2020 annual report as required under the Wisconsin Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Judd.
Yep, everything was in the packet. There's one correction Steve brought to my attention on page 3 of 11 of the annual report on the municipal separate stormwater system, the MS4 permit. 3B is the list of discharge detection and elimination, and how many outfalls did the municipality evaluate as part of their outline ongoing, the routine ongoing field screening. I can share my screen with you here. Share. I think you all can see this. Right here, this number 133 is wrong. So we're correcting that to say 66 because we have 66 outfalls. That's just an error in our system that we have 311 that we're working to correct. But I didn't catch that. That's the number I took out of there. So that will be corrected to accurately reflect that we've reviewed all the outfalls that we have.
Okay. The report was in your packet. Are there questions by anybody? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve it to be submitted with the correction identified.
So move.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion by Jason, a second by Tashidra. Any further discussion?
I did not second that.
Oh, I thought you did. Someone did.
Oh, that was
I think
me.
it was
Abby,
Abby.
I'm sorry. All right, we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. 10.2, Resolution 2021-023, a resolution authorizing the village attorney to collect, oh, this is a case against Durfam Lane and Todd Nelson. These fees have been paid, so we don't need to deal with this item anymore. Resolution 2021-024, resolution approving a correction to the final plat for the Fox Hill Estates replat to provide for the dedication of Outlot 10 for park purposes. Al?
This is simply to approve an affidavit of correction for the Fox Hills plat, which is actually the replat that the Hooper development is developing. When that final plat was approved by the board, Outlot 10 was dedicated to the village for stormwater, environmental corridor, and I think trail purposes. It wasn't specifically dedicated for park purposes, which was the original intent. And so what this affidavit does, and the affidavit's already been recorded by the surveyor, what this does if the board approves it, is to just change the dedication of that Outlot 10 to indicate that it's also for park purposes.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Colleen makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Bill seconds. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. 10.4, Resolution 2021-026, a resolution accepting the lowest qualified bids and awarding a contract for chip sealing, Contract A, and crack filling, Contract B, within the village. Greg?
Yep, everything's in the packet. We got really good bids on the crack fill. We're roughly 10,000 under budget there, and along with chip seal, we're about 10,000 under there as well. So we'll look to get this approved and move ahead with the maintenance.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve accepting the bids.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That time of year. All right, communications, 11.1 check register. I don't think anything there. Item 12, committee, commission, and board reports. DeForest Windsor Fire EMS District Board meeting. Colleen.
Oh, I don't remember what we did. Hang on a second. We had a lot of discussion again about a second station, threw that around a little bit. Budgets are all looking good. Nothing really outstanding. I guess that's about it. Unless you can think of something, Jane.
No, I think that's where we were. Library board.
Yeah, there was just kind of our standard annual approving the DPI annual report that we submit every year, which was a little bit trickier this year because, you know, obviously COVID, we usually report our numbers in terms of like how many people come to our programs, how many people check out books. And 2020 was definitely affected our numbers and also affected what kind of numbers we reported, but we got that submitted, and also our annual Dane County agreement for extension of library service approved. That just basically means that we provide services to non-DeForest residents, and Dane County in particular will reimburse us for those non-DeForest residents that use it. And then just, this might be more personally meaningful. Jane Hensey is retiring, and they recently took applicants to fill the adult services librarian position. So Jane's been obviously a very important part of the library for a long time, and it'll be a big transition, but just want to share that.
Right. And I realize now that I've been calling for the reports when we were in a section where we were pointing out the minutes were in your packet, but it'll just save us from having to go through them later on. Anything from the DeForest Area Community and Senior Center? Tashidra?
Yes. So we met on the 9th and got a couple reports. I think the one that's most pertinent to us, Reese, I've been really working with Barb and the board in regards to Park and Rec and different things of that nature. And so Barb did reassure the board that she could comfortably, and she felt comfortable about doing a soft reopen April 1st. And so I asked, how would that relay back to the Park and Rec? And there was a little pushback from other people, but Barb said that she does feel comfortable that Park and Rec would be able to use the facilities after hours and different things of that nature, due to the long-standing relationship that the 3 municipalities have with the community center. And that's when we got into a really big debate on, is DeForest, reaching out to the schools and reaching out to other entities where they could use space. And I just made it perfectly clear. My role is to represent, gather data, report back, and then bring that forward. So I really didn't speak to that because I don't know what contracts we have with other people, nor does that matter right now because you want to know about the senior center. So they're looking to do a soft reopen, and what that means is the senior services that they offer, limited spaces in the fitness room, possibly. And then Barb is asking Windsor Legal about different COVID requirements and stuff like that. Per HIPAA, we can't go around asking people if they're vaccinated, and we can't, tell people they can and can't come to the center based on whether or not they're vaccinated and different things of that nature. So we're working on that. And if the soft reopen goes well and everything moves forward, they're thinking about maybe May doing a little bit more opening. Park and Rec really doesn't pose that much of a threat because it's after hours, and you're using one particular area. Talked about, people coming in a specific door and exiting a specific door to minimize the risks that are posed to the social workers who work there or the case managers that work there during the day. So I didn't speak to other agreements or other things of that nature, nor do I think we need to. We talked a little bit about ABS moving out of DeForest, really glossed over that. We talked about the revitalization of Windsor downtown. That was very interesting. And the other interesting thing we talked about was the phone system and how the senior center, community center is looking to get their own. They were part of DeForest's program. So they're looking at not renewing with DeForest, but getting their own service. And I guess they're looking at Vantage right now. And that was agreed upon by both the commission and the Half Century. And then they also applied for the DeForest Area Foundation grant, and we're waiting to hear back about that. They said the application was amazing, and the community senior center had the best application that they've seen. So hopefully they'll get those funds, and then that'll be able to assist the senior center, community center more with the different things that they're trying to offer.
Thank you for the good report. And
you're welcome.
All right, and the Public Safety Committee minutes were in your.
Jane Abby had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Abby.
Yeah, I just had a question for Tisidra. Is is Windsor, like, where is Windsor at with, their downtown project? And I know there was talks of like them building their own community and senior center. Did they talk about like, if is that a done deal, or is that still like in flux, or I don't know. I was wondering what the status of that was, if you know.
There isn't a hard answer to that right now. I do know that Windsor is doing a lot of demolition of housing. They're increasing parking space. They're looking to move Village Hall close to the police department. They were pretty excited about the fire department practicing in Windsor. And so, yeah, they have definitely the plans to pull down more houses on Windsor Road. So we had a long talk when Bruce did his president report on all the different things that's going on in Windsor. So they're definitely doing a lot of moving and shaking over there. And that also led to the discussion of, do we need 2 senior centers, or are we possibly thinking of a satellite site to accommodate for, the senior center being here versus, a satellite being in Windsor. And the discussion is, and Vienna chimed in on this a little bit too, was looking at the need. I really wanted to look at the cost effective and the utilization of that. And the fact that the senior center services not just the 3 municipalities here, but there's other surrounding areas that come. So they're still working on, and COVID did put a little stop to a lot of the different things that they're trying to do. But they're doing different surveys and flyers for the Windsor area just to see how the community feels about it. So there are a lot of things going on, Abby, and keeping up with it has been very interesting.
Thank you. All right, moving forward, discussion, staff report on public affairs.
Oh, excuse me, Jane, I have a committee report.
Okay.
I should have brought this up at last meeting, since our committee met in the beginning of March. It was kind of a committee that is unattractive or just whatever. It's the Windsor Road Bridge Engineering Firm Selection Committee. And it was made up of half Windsor and half DeForest committee members to select a engineering firm for the Windsor Road Bridge, kind of right there by the pond park. And it was a very pleasant meeting, best meeting I've ever been to, the shortest and sweetest. And to keep it short, we selected a engineering firm, Strand Engineering, and that has been submitted to the state. And the bridge will be built hopefully in 2023, in case anybody asks, but the wheels are moving. And it's a fantastic area that economically I think has potential. And just, if somebody asks, when's the bridge going to be built? When's the splash pad going to be built? Tentatively 2023. So,
okay.
Thanks.
Good. Thanks for the update. Okay, staff report on public affairs.
Sure. One quick one. I noticed there's some legislation for eliminating all personal property tax with some appropriation to make us whole. But that would be at a point in time. I think it's 1/1/22 was the valuation date. The good thing of that is it locks us in of whatever the value is there, because personal property depreciates over time. But it doesn't give us any new personal property on new buildings, new businesses, things like that. So it's another way to kind of sever future revenues. Then a larger item, we're learning of the American Rescue Plan. And there's some information that we can share tonight. I've asked Lou to queue up a video, but the money's going to come through the state for the Village of DeForest. The amount identified is $1,060,000. That'll be in our hands at some point. So there'll be installment payments, it looks like. And then again, we're learning what to do with that money. What can we spend it on? Just so you know, Dane County looks like they're getting 106 million. So if you want to reach out to your county supervisor and tell them to use some of that locally as well. We certainly don't want to use it the same way twice, you know, and we should be together with them or filling gaps where they're not. And Jane and I and Michelle are going to be talking a little bit more here about what we can do for our community, what makes sense. So be patient for that. But let's listen to the video. I think it's short enough, and it's not us talking, staff, somebody else.
Hi there, this is Vicki Hellenbrand, and I'm the managing partner of the public sector practice for Baker Tilly. This is the 1-year anniversary since the WHO declared COVID-19 a global pandemic, and what here it's been. As you can see, still working from my home office. With the American Rescue Plan now signed, there's so much to consider and unpack for state and local governments. This plan eclipses the previous packages for state and local governments in terms of dollars and reach, and many local governments are poised to receive the first direct aid intended to get communities, their residents, schools, nonprofits, small businesses on the path to recovery. We don't know everything yet, but we're working around the clock to help communities navigate both the opportunities and the compliance aspects of this plan. I wanted to share with you some key facts as of today related to timing. The U.S. Treasury is required to pay the first tranche no later than 60 days after enactment. The second payment will come no earlier than 12 months after the first payment. Funds will be headed your way soon, we know that, and we also know that there's now a spending deadline of the calendar year end 2024. And related to state and local government allocations, funds can be used for many things. One would be costs associated with responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, including but not limited to assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. As you can see, that's rather broad. To support workers performing essential work during the public health emergency and by providing premium pay to eligible workers, or also by providing grants to eligible employees that have eligible workers who perform essential work. You can also recover revenue losses caused by COVID-19 and to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Now, there will be a significant amount of strategy, planning, and risk awareness required to navigate and plan and make the most of the funding coming to you. Considering the sheer amount of funding that will be available, it can be daunting to decide exactly where to start. We saw that with the CARES Act funding that happened previously. Talking with communities across the country, we're hearing the need for and assisting with evaluating the strategic priorities and development of funding and investment plans. And for example, will you use the funds to fill a budget shortfall or begin a new program that will require ongoing funding? There'll be a lot of requests. How do you work through the strategic vision of the outcomes that will be the most beneficial for your community? Now, understanding the aspects related to the cost and the revenue loss, accumulating, projecting, documenting the ways the funds could be used, all related to the pandemic impacts, tying that together will be important. How to validate the need for funding and developing programs and mechanisms, management systems for the other qualified expenditures mentioned previously, like for nonprofits and small business, will be important. And umbrellaing all of this is all aspects of compliance, because these funds are likely to be covered by a required single audit. In addition to the direct allocations, there's opportunities to seeking assistance in competitive allocations. All of that is just the beginning. There's actually so much more. And I encourage you to lean on Baker Tilly. We can help support you over the coming months as we've created an American Rescue Plan Task Force, and we're delving into all aspects of the plan so we can help you better understand the funding opportunities and the requirements, and both at the macro and the granular levels. We'll continue to reach out to you and provide you additional updates, but please feel free to contact us anytime with questions to help you strategize your approach. Thank you for your time today.
Okay. Questions for Steve, or Steve, more comments?
Yeah, well, obviously that's somewhat of a sales pitch by Baker Tilly, and we understand that. But because of the complexity that we'll likely see, at least in the upfront part of this, like the other CARES Act money, the complexity may go away if people can't spend it or don't know what to do with it. But I do hope to rely on Baker Tilly. We don't have the resources locally to manage or to get through this paperwork and understand what's going on. They actually are having another interactive session on this next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, that I'll be sitting in. I think Jane was going to as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot to learn yet, and we'll keep you up to date on things as we learn it.
Good. Questions? It's always nice to get $1 million plus to be able to figure out how to spend and put to work in our community. So
Can we build a skate park?
maybe not. We'll see. Gather your ideas and we will come back together and talk about them. All right, I think we have been through all of our reports. So with that, we will, the Dane County Cities and Villages update, I'm not sure there's much to report. I sat through part of the meeting, but I think most of what's most important is this American Rescue Plan and the legislation that Steve discussed regarding property taxes. So, yeah. I would also, as part of the, I didn't call on the Community Development Authority, and I would ask Jason if he wants to add anything, but I would like to announce that Ed Wall has retired and is moving forward and is no longer at the CDA. So Michelle reported to you on the HHR grant that we discussed and agreed to apply for. So I think that was most of what I had. Jason, do you have anything you want to add on CDA? I should have called on you.
No, that's okay. I really don't. Just news on Ed. We wish him well.
Good, good. All right. Then I would entertain a motion to move into closed session.
I'll make the motion.
We have multiple moves. Why don't we have Abby Tishidra? Would you, or do we get a second?
Second, yes.
We have a second. Okay. Roll call, please, Lou.
Trustee Allen,
Aye.
Trustee Kramer,
Aye.
Trustee Landgraf,
Aye.
Trustee Lowry,
Aye.
Trustee Little,
Aye.
President Cahill Wolfgram.
Yes.
All right, I will, for those that are attending close, I'll get you into the break room and
Is everyone back?
yes, everyone's back.
Okay. Item 17, action resulting from closed session. 17.1, a resolution 2021-025, a resolution authorizing the village president and village clerk to execute a contract with Verizon Wireless, amending the lease agreement for space on Token Creek Water Tower.
Motion to approve.
We have
A second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Any other business to come before the board? Abby?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it was last week I observed, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I observed the neighborhood meeting for that condo development in the Conservancy area. And I don't know if it was just because that was my first time observing one of these, but it was, I thought it was really well done. I thought I liked the methodical approach that they had where they took the concerns that residents had and like shared how, you know, the changes that they made or explanations for why they have it designed a certain way. And I wouldn't mind being invited to future neighborhood meetings because it was just really good experience. And I hope they're all like that. I really appreciate that we even have that. I can see the huge benefit to that. And I talked with, I think, one resident in that area that was at the meeting, and she did sound like she, not that she like completely had a 180, but she said that a lot of her concerns were addressed, and the only thing that was lingered was like traffic concerns, and if there was a way to make sure that when they come out that they're directed more towards River Road, I think that way. So yeah, so it was, thank you for inviting all of us. Thanks.
Well, and it wasn't our meeting, so it was the developers meeting, and I'm glad that you went and observed. I know Bill went to part of it, so thank you for doing that. Anything else? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Is there a second?
Who moved?
All right. I cleaned it.
Who was the mover?
I was the mover. Oh, well.
Clean Tashidra. We have a mover and we have a second.
Okay. Colleen and Tashidra?
Yep. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Clearly time to go home. Opposed, same sign. All right.